Hello, Internet. I am here today to show you my solution to a kata on Codewars, that is, a coding challenge. It's called Ziggurat Ride of Fortune, and, well, to back up a little bit, my approach on this was to do an object-oriented program where I created classes, and I'll walk through this as I do it, and I had some pretty nasty bugs. I'll mention those as I go through, but then I got it to solve the sample tests, but on the full test battery there are some really huge tests, and it was timing out of the 12 seconds of processing time that Codewars gives you. So to actually solve this one, I'm going to need a new approach, and if you've got ideas, put them in the comments, please. But for now, I'm pretty happy even with just getting the sample tests right. So I'm going to present the solution that I have. Links for important things will be below. So the idea of the problem is this. You and a group of explorers have found a legendary ziggurat hidden in an obscure jungle. According to legend, the ancient structure houses portals to other worlds. Ooh. The outer west wall of the ziggurat consists of a series of entrance doors. When an explorer enters through a door, they sit in a mobile cart that moves in a straight path until it touches a switch or hits a wall. A switch reroutes the cart either left or right depending on the state of the switch and the cart's movement direction. Interdimensional portals line the entire north, east, and south walls inside the ziggurat. If a cart hits one of these, the occupying explorer exits through the portal before them. If a cart ends at the west wall, the explorer exits through a door and returns back outside. The expedition leader has assigned you the task of keeping track of the exit points for each explorer. You are given an artifact that provides you with a map of the ziggurat's inner chamber. Okay, I won't read this entire thing. Again, the link's in the description if you want to look for it, but this is an example of, I like the smiley face. This is an example of going into a switch, and this tells which way they get rerouted, and also every time, does it say it here? It says it later. Every time, anyway, somewhere it says every time an explorer goes into a switch, the switch changes direction, or it rotates 90 degrees. Where does it say that? Immediately after a card passes through a switch, the switch changes state by rotating 90 degrees. Okay, and this is an example. The cart goes in, gets turned. Now these are in different states, so the cart gets turned that way, gets turned that way. Okay, input 2 arguments. An n by m matrix representing the layout of the ziggurat interior, and an array list of the doors, that is rows, entered by each explorer in sequence. Assume each follower explorer enters immediately after the preceding explorer has exited. That means that whatever the states of the switches were when Explorer 1 left have to be preserved as Explorer 2 comes in. Output. Your function should return an array of the exit points of the explorers who exit through portals and null/none for those who return back outside. I'll be using Python for this, so it's going to be none. And here's the example of the input data. I'll make this a little bigger so it's easier to see. Go even bigger. Artifact. Notice that it's a list of strings, and explorers are a list of integers. So 1 indicates that it comes in from this direction at round 3. So it's going to, I know that it's going to hit A and go in this direction, and then there, and then out that direction, because the above diagram shows that. Ziggurat size, n is range 40 to 6 inclusive. Final test suite, 15 fixed tests and 100 random tests. Turns out these 40 by 40 ziggurats are intense and nasty, and that's why it's timing out, because they're pretty big. Okay, let's get to it. Let's train. Train again, because technically I've already done it. Oh look, and it shows my code, but let's hide that for now. Okay, I'm not going to do the coding in Ziggurat. I'm going to do it in the IDE where I chose to solve it, which is PyCharm, which I just found out about and decided to give a try since they have a free community edition. And it turns out as long as you're only doing things in Python, the community edition is really powerful. if you want to do things with Django or JavaScript and integrate that with your Python projects, then you would consider going for the paid version. This isn't a commercial for PyCharm, by the way, even though it might start to sound like that, because it's new to me and I'm excited about it. Okay. So I feel like warming up a little bit. I'm just going to print hello world and make sure things are running. Oops, that's not, oh yeah, wrong shortcut. Okay, so I just, with one shortcut, it runs it in a, it creates a, why is there a space there? I want to reformat that. I don't like that. Or refactor, rather, rename. Okay, that's better. Run it again. Hello world. Okay. Now I'm going to be not entirely doing this from memory. I'm going to be looking at my existing solution, but I'm going to type everything out because I find it's easier to follow along at that speed. If you get bored, maybe skip to the end of the video or skip to the link on GitHub that I'm going to send out in the below the video. So the first thing I'm thinking about is on every one of the test cases, we're going to have a set of switches that we need to keep track of. And what's the information about the switches we need to know? We need to know where it is, X and Y position, and we need to know what state it's in. Now we could do this as like, I was going to say a list of tuples, but that wouldn't work because tuples are immutable and we'll have to change the state as explorers hit the switches. Or we could do a list of lists, but it would pretty quickly get hard to keep track of what's what. So instead, I'm going to create a class so I can initiate switch objects and have code to conveniently print them. And again, in debugging, that's going to be super valuable, and it's going to keep the code organized in a good way. So here we go. The way to define a class in Python is to type class space the switch name, and by convention, the class name is capitalized. And what I like to do first is make an init method, which automatically takes self. That's a nice thing about the IDE. It reminds you that you have to feed self as a parameter into functions that are, well, actually, init is a method for the class switch. We're going to have X. Default value is going to be 0. We're going to have Y, default value equals 0. And we're going to have state, default value equal A. And now we create attributes, so self.x equal X. If you haven't seen this before, what's happening is, oops, it doesn't want those spaces there. If the function that calls it, if the user or function that calls it, because in this case a user can be whatever uses the function. If the user doesn't specify anything for X, it uses X is equal to 0. So we're feeding X into self.x. We're feeding Y into self.y, Y equals self.y. And for self.state, we have the state variable. It's for this state variable and this state attribute don't necessarily have to have the same name, but it's convenient to do so for keeping track of things. And the program knows the difference between self.state versus just the variable state. So those have the same name, but they're not the same thing. The next thing I want is a string function that converts this to a string, and this works under the hood with the print function, so it's really useful. I always want to type self, but it does that for me. And this time there aren't any parameters because all the information that we want to print is already contained within the object of the class, or the instance of the class. Now I'm going to set a string equal to, the way I did it is switch at location, and I'm going to use these and format the string, location at blank comma blank with state blank. There's a shinier way to do this, but I'm going to do it the way I'm used to. And then that operates as an object, we feed that to the method .format self.x, self.y, self.state. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is test this, so I'm going to create a new Python file that I'm going to call testzig for video.py. Sure, we can add to get. So import zig copy for video, so it's going to import. Actually, we don't want .py. Now we want to test creating a switch. So my switch, and the syntax to instantiate an object of the switch class is simply to type the class name and then parenthesis. And I'm not going to enter any values here right now. Oops, but there's a problem because switch is not defined. I need to use zig copy. Why isn't it autofilling for me? Whatever. Dot switch. Okay, so it needs to close those. I'm not using those right now. It needs to refer back to this file, which has the class definition switch. And I might prefer a shorter name. Let's refactor this to zigvid. Refactor. Refactor, rename, zigvid. Oh, no, I want zig vid test. I don't want to start it with test because then it would think I want it. Vid test. I'm taking too much time on this little detail. My switch equals vid test.switch. Video because I'm using this file for the video. That's what the reason for that is. Okay. Print my switch. Run that. See what we get. Already a mistake. Return S. I know I could just return the string, but I like to do it this way. If you don't like it, complain in the comments. Now return. Okay, we have a switch at location 0, 0 with state A, and now let's make another switch. I'll call it your switch. You're watching this video, you get a switch. Vidtest.switch of 1, 5, B. Print your switch. Run that, and here we have switch at location 1, 5 with state B. Okay, that all works. So I can comment out these guys and go back to our next function. Actually, I'm gonna call it for this video for now, and more to come later.